Welcome back to Brain Scratch Searchlight. I'm John Lordan. As you can see, I'm not here alone. I've got a good friend of mine, someone very important to the true crime community. Jason Watts is with me here today. I figured for the last Friday episode of Searchlight, which, in case you don't know, Searchlight is moving away from Fridays. Starting next week, it's going to be every Wednesday. I thought, let's go back to the case that helped start Searchlight. It was really the disappearance of Brandon Lawson that kind of made me split Brain Scratch into these two separate shows. And a year ago, some items of Brandon's were found. Some remains, human remains, were located. But we've been waiting for news on that, for tests on that. We're going to go through the whole story basically from start to finish and see if we have some of those answers being a year down the road from the discovery, a little over a year down the road at this point, actually. So, Jason, welcome to the channel. Good to see you again.
Hey, buddy. Thanks for having me. You know, it's always a joy for me to talk to you. You and I have developed quite a good friendship and quite a good respect for each other, and
yeah,
respect for what the other does.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is a guy that I really appreciate getting to spend time with, not just in situations like this where, we're recording or talking about cases, but just on a personal level, whenever we get together at CrimeCon, or if we can find a little bar to saddle up to and, have a couple beers and just spend some time together. So it's always good to see Jason here. Going back to Brandon Lawson, how did you know Brandon?
Went to high school with him. We went to school in Joshua, Texas, Joshua High School. Contrary to what's been put out there a little bit, a lot of people have put out that he went to high school in Crowley. His parents moved to Crowley after we graduated from high school. And so everybody always just assumes that's where, he's from and went to school. But no, we went to Joshua High School in Joshua, Texas. And I had a couple of classes with Brandon and passed him in the hallways a little bit. And I was kind of a goofy, awkward kid in high school. What can I say? Puberty's a pain for all of us. But I certainly got reminded of my status quo by the upperclassmen a few times. And Brandon stepped in for me on an occasion or two and kept me from spending the night inside a locker.
Gotcha. Well, that sounds like a pretty good guy and someone that you'd want on your side for sure. So currently it has been updated. It's changed a little bit lately, but the Charlie Project's current page on it states that Brandon Lawson disappeared from San Angelo, Texas on August 8th, 2013. I didn't even realize until we got connected here. We're coming up on 10 years since his disappearance this year.
Yep.
He abandoned his vehicle after it ran out of gas and called both his brother and 911 to ask for help, but no one was able to locate him. And of course, that 911 call would be highly analyzed and scrutinized in the true crime community. People trying to determine what's he really saying. It sounds like he might be trying to hide from someone in the 911 call. Do you have any thoughts on the 911 call? I mean, you knew him. You knew how he spoke. Do you have a sense of what he's saying in that?
You're right. We have seen that call analyzed to, the ends of the earth and back, so much so that it almost overshadowed the rest of the case itself. And, Brandon almost became a footnote in his own disappearance.
Yeah.
But, when I listen to it, I'm kind of like everybody else. My thoughts and opinions have changed as time goes on. But I think basically what he's saying is, I'm in the middle of the field. Something has just pushed some guys over. We're out here going towards Abilene on both sides. My trucks ran out of gas. Something or someone is chasing me into the woods. Please hurry. And, the dispatcher asks, do you need an ambulance? Do you need the police? And he basically indicates that he needs police.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a pretty terrifying phone call from that aspect. Like, it really sounds like something is going bad out there. He's trying to get away from it, and to the point where he's calling for officers. Just to rewind a little bit, earlier that night, he's having a disagreement at home with Ledessa, his common law wife. Decides he's going to leave and go to his father's house, and that's basically how he gets out on the road and gets stranded, right?
Correct.
Okay. Just out of curiosity, because this was a big thing I remember from analyzing that call. The term strooper, is that a real thing for state troopers?
No, I this is just my personal belief. I believe he was probably trying to say state trooper, and in his heightened state, just misspoke.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we've all seen that gone over a million times online. Oh, he's trying to say this or he's trying to say that. He was known to kind of stammer or stutter a little bit when he got excited, and that happens to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Especially when the adrenaline's pumping, you're in fight or flight mode. But I believe he's trying to say state trooper and just
mashed it together.
Accidentally mixes the words together. Yeah.
Gotcha. So Brandon's family, which consists of his parents, his brother, his sister, his common law wife, Ledessa, and they have 3 children together. Plus, he has one more that he had with someone else before he was with Ledessa. All of them and more family and friends would go on for years wondering where Brandon is, and probably doing the same thing many of us were in terms of trying to get some clue. I don't know why, but when I first started listening to that 911 call, I felt like the answer was supposed to be in there. Like there was some way, some analysis someone was going to do that was going to crack out, hey, do you hear this thing in the background? And I think that's just because we're so wired to be these kind of crime solvers from all of the fictional crime that we watch. But just I've still got this feeling of like, there could be a chance that someone discovers the thing in there that gives us more answers in this case. I don't know. I couldn't find it after years of going through it myself.
I think a lot of people that heard that call felt that way. I had people message me over the years, hey, he's saying this, hey, he's saying that, I thought that analyzing the call was an important thing to do if you were going to look at the case, but myself personally was not convinced that it was the end all be all.
Right. Right.
I even had a conversation with one gentleman, bless his heart. He lined everything out that he thought Brandon was saying and was adamant about it. And I said, okay, this is good. Where's Brandon?
Yeah.
And he was like a deer in headlights. So,
well, that's the frustrating thing about it though, Jason,
yeah.
Because how often do we have some form of recording or media that is so close to a person disappearing or something happening? Right. I mean, if there was something, and I think there was a couple of spots, if I'm recalling correctly, where people thought they heard a gunshot or they heard some kind of pop in the background or something like that. Like, it could have been a recording of the tragedy that took Brandon away from this world. Yeah, I don't personally think it was. Obviously, I think you feel like that as well. Who knows how much time could have passed between that 911 call and whatever actually did happen to Brandon, right, to take him.
Yeah, no, I was not convinced that whatever happened on that call was or whatever was going on necessarily. I don't think that Brandon met, whatever he met at the end of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, I knew that from, well, there were some, when Kyle went and did his interview with, Crawl Space.
Brandon's brother. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He gave a lot of useful information in that interview. And one piece of information that he gave was that, when he arrived on scene, he did briefly make contact with his brother, even if it was just for a few minutes. And this happened after the 911 call. So, just based on that from Kyle, we knew that, okay, Brandon is still alive at this point if he's able to answer Kyle's phone calls. So, Now, what exactly has happened between those 2 points, we don't exactly know.
What was his story about the end of that interaction that Brandon just ran off?
Well, he said that, he got to where the truck was and he didn't see Brandon around the truck, so he called him. And he asked Kyle asked Brandon, where are you? I'm here at your truck. Where are you? And Brandon indicated, I'm here. I can see you, but Kyle could not see Brandon. So about that time is when the deputy arrived from responding from the 911 call from the trucker.
Yeah.
And Brandon told Kyle, hey, there's a cop. And they had another small brief exchange of words, and then Brandon either hung up on Kyle or the phone call dropped, and that was the last communication.
Yeah. I'm going to try to fill in things as we're going, just in case you're not familiar with this case, but a trucker was basically driving by and saw that the vehicle was off the side of the road and it wasn't really parked safely. It was kind of hanging out into the road a little bit, and that's why he called, right?
Yeah. He was coming from San Angelo, and right there before you get to where that truck was found, there's like a small curve at the bottom of a hill. So you basically, it's not like a steep hill or anything. It's just kind of like a small incline, but it goes down and then around. So this trucker, he's hauling this big old heavy load. It's an 18-wheeler, and he comes around that corner, and hello, there's a pickup truck kind of in the roadway. So he has to, swerve to avoid hitting it.
Yeah.
And then he continues on into the city of Bront and stops at the local gas station, the Stripes there, for fuel for the truck. And he goes in and talks to the store clerk, and they're just making small chat, and he says, "There's a truck there on the south side of town, and I almost hit it." And the store clerk, it's a small town, population's 1,000 people, everybody kind of looks out for everybody. So the store clerk said, well, why don't you call the sheriff's office and let them know it's out there so nobody else hits it. And that's what he did.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know Brandon when you're going to high school together. Do you stay in touch with him as the years go on, or do you kind of lose connection and then eventually hear about this missing guy?
Yeah, I mean, you know how it is when we graduate high school.
Yeah.
Everybody kind of often does their own thing. That's pretty much what happened.
Yeah.
I did not see or have any kind of contact with Brandon after we graduated high school. You stay in contact with your close buddies, and sometimes you still have best friends that you're still friends with to this day. But a lot of people kind of go off into the world, and that's how it was.
How did you hear about him missing?
Well, I don't remember exactly who, but by 2013, Facebook was a thing, and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of your high school classmates are either friends with you on Facebook or friends with someone you know on Facebook. And I think it was that Saturday morning, because he went missing overnight Thursday into Friday. It was that Saturday morning or that Sunday morning, I can't remember. But I remember coming downstairs and getting on the laptop and getting on Facebook, and a lot of people that went to high school with us was a couple of them were like, has anybody heard from Brandon Lawson? His family hasn't heard from him in 2 days. And they can't make contact with him. They don't know where he is, and his truck was found. And I was just like, oh man, that's horrible. Hopefully he gets in touch with somebody, not knowing that it's going to be as serious as it turned out to be. And unfortunately it was that serious. He was missing.
Now, how does it move from, okay, I'm hearing about a former classmate that's gone missing. How do you get from that to, I'm going to go and help and I'm going to try to find this guy? What happens within you to get to that point?
Well, the story kind of went on for, I don't know, a week or two. Nobody, he's officially listed as a missing person. The family created their Facebook page for him, Help Find Brandon Lawson. That came about pretty quick. I want to say it was probably about the second or third week. Ledessa was talking about, doing some more searches and stuff like that. So I basically just messaged the admin of the Help Find Brandon Lawson Facebook page, which turned out to be Ledessa. And just said, hey, if you need help with a search, I'm more than happy to come down there and try to help out in any way that I can. And the whole thing kind of really grew and exploded from there.
Yeah.
It went from that to sharing his flyer all over, true crime groups and missing person groups on Facebook and social media. And I noticed that, oftentimes when I would post, I would get a lot of questions. The chatter would start back up. And so what I decided to do from that point was try to be able to answer some of those questions for people if I could. So I began researching the case as much as I could as a private citizen. And I visited the area for the first time. I thought I I want to say it was 2015, but it may actually be 2017. Matter of fact, I'm pretty sure it was 2017. I went down to Bront for the first time just to see the area for myself. And it's like I said, man, it's just kind of slowly built over all these years. And right around 2019, I'd say, I was watching a podcast episode from Crawl Space, and they had on a private investigator who is a retired police chief, a man by the name of Lou Barry.
Mm-hmm.
He was, working on a case up out of Vermont, but he was also associated with a nonprofit organization founded by the father of the missing young lady from Vermont, Private Investigations for the Missing. And I knew that a man who was once a retired police chief had to have had a lot of investigative experience. And so I actually reached out to Mr. to Lou and said, hey, this is who I am. This is what I'm doing. This is what I think, just based off what I know happened to the guy. Can you kind of double check my logic here? And, if I'm on the wrong path, can you point me in the right one, so to speak?
What was your assumption at that point about what had happened to Brandon?
To everything I was seeing based off that point led me to believe that Brandon was most likely somewhere still in the area of where his truck was found. But I wanted Lou to kind of double check me on that, am I headed on the right path kind of thing.
Yeah, because there was all kinds of stories floating out there. Oh, he was taken for human trafficking. Oh, he jumped the border. Oh, he did this, he did that.
Came across a drug deal, came across the cartels doing something, blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, probably not a bad move to get in touch with someone with some experience and run it by them.
Yeah, coincidentally, Lou had a trip planned to Texas. He lives up in Massachusetts, but one of his sons is based down here in the military, and so he actually had a trip planned to Texas in the weeks following that first contact I had with him. And so he agreed to meet up with me and kind of have coffee and discuss the case. And I gave him everything that I had at that time. And he said, give me a couple of weeks to kind of go through everything and go through all the information and separate what's fact from fiction, and I'll get back with you. And it was probably 2 or 3 weeks later, he messaged me. He says, I think you're on the right path. I think he's most likely out there somewhere on that land. And it's just a matter of searching for and finding him if there's anything left after all this time to find. And at that point, it was 2019. So it was 6 years, after the fact. But Lou and I were hopeful that there was at least some evidence out there still. Of what kind, we weren't sure, whether it would be remains or remnants of clothing or whatever. But we were hopeful that there would at least be something.
Yeah.
And so, when all this went down in August of 13, there were some issues that came up with being able to search, landowners. There were some landowners in the area that did not want their property searched. Law enforcement did search some of the area, out there. I think Texar came in October of 2013 with cadaver dogs and attempted to do a search and locate them, and they were unsuccessful.
And we had what we typically see in a lot of cases like this, like a lot of criticism towards law enforcement. family isn't sure that it's getting all the attention it should be. Like we kind of had some of those more typical things that we see in missing persons cases. But
Yeah.
I know that when you went out there in 2017, I think it was pretty soon around that you were in contact with me, and you were being very clear about, like, it's time for us to turn that boat around. Like, we need to get everyone on the same page and really, try to make sure everyone's working together to try to help
Right.
find Brandon.
Right. And, like I said, when I first started really kind of getting into this and communicating with Lou, that's one of the things I told Lou is, look, I can't change what happened in August of 13 between the family and law enforcement. I mean, there was nothing anybody could do to change how that went. The only thing I had any kind of control over at all was maybe how it would play out, how it would end. And I wanted things to end better than they began.
Yeah.
And so that was where that shift kind of came. Plus, I knew if I was going to start searching for Brandon myself, I wasn't ignorant to how things like this have to go. You can't solve a case without law enforcement. You just can't. I mean, you can go out there and search all day long, but the instant you find something, they have to come in. The investigative process has to be respected. Chain of custody has to be respected. They have to be the ones that collect and send things off to the lab. I can't do that. So
Yep.
there needed to be at least some sort of easement of how things were going, even if it was just two ships passing in the sea kind of thing, and they tip their hat to each other as they go by. That's where that shift from me comes from.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you went out in 2017 out there for the first time, was that for a search effort, or were you just kind of checking things out?
That was just me seeing the area for myself.
Yeah. And what type of insight did you get from that? What did you notice about the area? What concerns came up for you about search efforts or about what happened to Brandon? What were your thoughts when you were first out there looking?
Well, as soon as we got to where the cross is, which marks where the truck was found, I was like, that's a lot of cactus, man. This is not a good place to be in pitch black, middle of the night. No moonlight that night. He probably couldn't even see his hand in front of his face. My first thought is, man, how does anybody navigate this at night? Yeah, they were in the middle of a drought in 2013. There wasn't as much cactus and thick mesquite, but there was still quite a bit of it. And depending on what area you're in, there could be a lot of it. So, yeah, I mean, my first kind of thought, seeing the area, why did they not find him if he was here? But again, you start talking about thick vegetation and terrain, it's understandable how something could possibly be missed.
Right. So when did the first search effort happen? When was the first time that you were actually out there, boots on the ground, got access to one of these properties and started looking?
Well, when I made contact with Lou Berry, one of the things I told him is that, look, some of the landowners in this area, they're just not comfortable with people running around on their property. Is there any way we can search that is at minimal risk for them? And Ledessa, back in the day had stated that she wanted to try drones. And so Chief Berry and I said, well, maybe that's the route to go. At least starting out is drones. And so we made contact with a couple of the landowners who were open to having drones flown over their property. So we conducted our first drone search in January. No, actually, I correct that. It was March of 2020.
Okay.
Right before we all got shut down for COVID. When I made contact with Chief Berry in the beginning and discussed the drone searches, one reason we didn't start them right then and there in 2019 was I had gone down to the area a few weeks prior, and the grass and the vegetation had grown up so thick. I told Lou, I said, if we try to fly a drone now, there's no way it's going to see the small evidence that we're probably looking for at this point. So he and I decided that we would check again around August, September, October to see if the summer heat had killed any of the grass off through just dry heat and drought. And I went down there in August of 19 to check, and it wasn't any better. It was just still overgrown. And I said, I think I called Lou and I said, I think what we're going to have to really do, man, is wait till winter.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the winter is going to have to come in and kill this grass off. And that's why we waited till March of 2020. That winter season came through and killed a lot of that. It cleared it up, and we were able to see a lot better from the drone. Matter of fact, we actually captured an image that we thought was a tennis shoe, and I ended up going back down there to check, and it wasn't a tennis shoe. It just turned out to be a rock that was weirdly shaped,
Yeah.
but easily mistaken for a tennis shoe.
I love the approach, though, to think of, okay, hey, look, we've got people in this area that aren't going to want searchers all over their land. What's the least invasive thing we can do? And even if the drone search isn't successful, at that point, you've at least kind of cracked the door open with those landowners. And you're like, oh, you guys let us do this. Now I've got this picture of something that looks like a shoe. Can I go back out there and actually check this item? So the communication outside of the physical aspect of the search, that's important. The communication with these other parties, just as important. And I love that approach. Kind of just, here's the kind of highest level thing that we can do. Literally, we're flying drones over. Are you guys cool with that?
Right.
And then take it from there.
It was exactly that. It was just kind of the slow opening of the door.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we did another drone search in this. I want to say it wasn't a drone search per se. It was just a flyover. In the summer of 2020, our country was locked down from COVID. Half the country was laid off from work, myself included. So I was really able to put some effort into identifying landowners, especially the ones in the immediate vicinity. I talked to Ladessa and I said, I think I want to move from drones to actual foot searches if possible.
Yeah.
And she said, well, if that's the case, what I'd really like to do is just start from scratch. Act like we have not searched anything and just go through it all over again. And I thought that was a logical step,
as
did Lou. Lou thought that was a great idea too. So I began reaching out to one of the landowners that was that owns a piece of property in the immediate vicinity of where the truck was found. And I was just going to propose a drone search at first, but he actually said, I'll just give you full access to the property, man. Y'all come out here with a search team, search it. And I said, okay, well, here's what I want to do. I'd like to come out with my drone pilot, fly it over the property so that I at least, get a little bit of a feel for it without having to walk all over all of it by myself. And, and he said, okay, that's fine. And that's what we did. And this was probably in June or July of 20.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, it was hot because Texas is hot in summer. And I called Ladessa. I said, okay, I think this is a good property to search, but I'm a little worried that if we try to search it right now, it's so hot, it's 100+ degrees. The last thing I want to do is get a bunch of people out here and they start falling out and stuff like that. So why don't we wait till it gets a little bit cooler? And she said, well, and she agreed with that. And so we decided of October of 2020. And so October 2020 was the first boots on the ground search for Brandon in 7 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
How many would there be?
25 of us, I think.
25 people out there on that search? Awesome. Yep. And how many searches?
We searched all day Saturday and most of Sunday.
Okay.
And we covered quite a bit of the property. We got to a point though where there was just so much cactus and so much vegetation that we just couldn't continue. I was wearing whenever I go do my searches, I always wear a GoPro camera on my chest.
Yeah.
I don't know if I shared any of that footage with you, but there's one point I'm stuck. I can't move. I've got cactus all around me, and I radioed to one of the other guys. I think you may have to come in here and help me get out.
Wow.
I can't move. I can't go anywhere. That's how thick it was in some places.
Yeah. So that's at the end of 2020. Mm-hmm. When's the next search?
Well, we finished everything we wanted to accomplish on that property. we had to kind of cross some properties off the list because the landowners were not open to searches. In the meantime, I began collecting more evidence with Lou, such as putting in Freedom of Information Act requests and as I mentioned, Lou's a retired police chief, so he's able to really kind of work with law enforcement agencies, and they'll trust him because he was one of them.
So you're going after Coke County records, basically?
We're requesting records from them together,
Yeah.
pretty much.
Wow.
Yeah, and they shared some of those records with us, much sometimes to my shock, but they did. We were able to get the reports written by the sheriff and the responding deputy that night. We were able to get all of the 911 call audio, including the truck driver's 911 call.
Mm-hmm.
We learned a lot from that stuff. We were even able to obtain Brandon's cell phone records, and that taught us a lot.
Yeah.
It really solidified further to us that he had to be out there somewhere. And it was just, so what we began doing was putting into account everything that had been searched by law enforcement and Texar. And we kind of worked on that.
And you're crossing that off, basically.
Yeah, we're crossing certain things off and taking certain things into account based on all that information we received.
Right.
I called Lou up and I said, Lou, he's either in an area and they missed him somehow, or he's somewhere they haven't looked. And he agreed with that. And so I said, I'm going to keep reaching out to landowners, but one thing I'm going to ask them when I make contact with them is A, if they've heard of the case, B, if they've had their property searched. So in January of 21, I sent a letter to a landowner. I got a response back probably within a couple of weeks. And, I send landowners, a letter, I sent them a letter explaining who I am, what I'm doing. I send them a copy of Brandon's missing persons flyer. And I also send them a map of their property relative to where Brandon's truck was found, so that would show them, this is why I think he could be on your property.
Yeah.
And the landowner contacted me and he said, man, I had no idea. I've never heard of this case at all.
Wow.
And I said, I asked him how long he had owned the property, and he indicated that, they did own the property at that time. And I said, do you remember law enforcement or anybody contacting you about a search? He said, no, this is the first time anybody's ever contacted us.
Now, how out of whack is it? Like, is his truck literally on the border of this guy's property? Like, is it reasonable that law enforcement should have reached out to him? Or is there some reason why he just didn't get the message? Was he living there?
No, nobody lives on the property. They simply own it for hunting, and they live in a completely different part of the state.
Okay.
You come across that a lot, actually, believe it or not. People just own pieces of property to go hunt on.
Yeah.
They own it so they can claim an agricultural exemption on taxes.
Right.
Or they inherit it. So no, and it was not per se in the immediate area of where the truck was found, but I would say it was a reasonable area.
Sure.
That's what
Sure.
we've already put out there that what we found was a mile out from where Brandon's truck was located. So now I won't indicate the direction.
Yeah.
Because I want to protect this landowner's, privacy. But one thing I knew before searching this property was that law enforcement had flown over a lot of the area. But when the landowner told me that he had not been contacted, that told me that they probably had not foot searched it.
Right.
So I called Ledessa and I said, hey, I found this property that I really think is a good place to search. And she said, okay, well, let's do it. And I contacted Lou and I said, look, this guy has no idea about the case. I'm feeling good about searching here. And he felt the same way. So we then put together a search for April of 2021. That was our goal. Now, about this time, the country started kind of opening up from COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And so my business that I was working for started to explode pretty much. I mean, it was the oil business. So the oil, people were driving cars again now.
Yep.
Things were opening up. We're drilling for oil again. We're pumping oil out of the ground. So I got really busy.
Brandon's business too, right? He worked oil fields, right?
Yeah, he actually worked in the field, like on the drilling pad sites. And so I worked for a company that builds the pumps.
Right.
But that whole industry as a whole got busy again.
Yeah.
The landowners, his job got really busy. A lot of the people that were going to search with us, their jobs all started picking back up. So we were booming. And I was still going to do the search. But the closer we started to get to the date, I was starting to put in a lot of overtime. A lot of the searchers were starting to work.
This thing is moving at the speed of volunteer. Like that's the statement. I mean, you got to be honest about, like, you've got a life, you've got a family, all your searchers have lives and families. Like, the certain, like, the stars have to line up a certain way for this kind of thing to happen in the way that it does.
Right.
So, yeah.
So anyway, that weekend started to approach, and I was not going to be able to get away from my job. And a lot of the searchers weren't. And I called Ladessa, and she was getting busy. And I called the landowner, and he's like, "Man, I'm sorry. I know we agreed on this, but I just can't. My business is booming. I just can't get away to come down there and open the gate and all that stuff for you." And I said, "Okay, well, I already know the vegetation's starting to grow. As much as this sucks, we're going to have to put this off."
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we decided to wait again. I went back down in August to check the area out. Terrain was horrible. Weren't going to be able to see. At this point, you're talking 8 years after the fact. What you're looking for, especially if it's remains, is going to be small. So the grass was just going to cover that all up.
Yeah.
And I could have gone out there and probably searched anyway, but my probability of success would have been significantly lower.
Yeah. And you wouldn't be able to mark it off, right? You'd feel like, oh, we got to go back out and search again when this is a bit more clear. Yeah.
When I went out there to do these searches, I wanted to give them the best opportunities for success that I possibly could.
Yeah.
And so that's why I would wait. So August of 21 passes. I stay in contact with the landowner. I said, "Okay, let's shoot this for January of 2022. That hunting season will be over. There shouldn't be anybody out there hunting. It won't be hot. We'll just shoot for that." So that's what we did. January of 2022 rolls around, January 15th. And that's the day that everything changes.
Yeah. Pretty soon after that, I get a text message from you wanting to talk. We've got some big news, all that hard work. And it's interesting to hear the steps that actually lead up to it, because it's also about timing. It's about being smart with these efforts, because you are dealing with limited resources on many fronts. About establishing these relationships to get those gates open. Like there's just so much that is clicking into place over the course of years. I mean, you guys are hearing it. This is a process of years for this to happen.
Right. It just all goes to show you, when the good Lord has a plan, that he does it in his time.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And in the meantime, he moves all the pieces together to make it happen the way he has it planned out. And that's kind of what you're hearing, is that all being explained on how this all came together.
Yeah. So what happens on that day? What happens?
Leading up to the search, I had remained in contact with the landowner, and I had also gathered a group of volunteers that I knew I could trust, people that most of them were part of the 2020 search. There were a few new people, and In 2021, I had met Whitney and Melissa from the Colts Crimes and Cabernet podcast. They decided to cover Brandon's case, so I actually went down to San Angelo, met with them, helped them put together their episode, established a good friendship with them, and they said, if you ever come down here to do a foot search, we want to be a part of it. I said, okay. So contacted them, I said, hey, January 15th, this is, I think, when we're going to rock and roll. And of course, they were immediately on board. They wanted to be a part of it. And the whole week leading up to the search, I was keeping an eye on the weather. And Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, reports all said high of 49, slightly breezy. So I'm like, okay, it's going to be a little cool.
Yeah.
But it'll be okay. We'll have to, wear heavy coats, whatever. We'll make it work. I called the landowner Wednesday evening, did not get a response from him, and I hadn't talked to him in probably about 3 or 4 weeks at that point. Tried to contact him the next day, didn't get an answer from him. Was starting to get a little nervous.
Yeah.
Text him, got a message back from his wife. He is in ICU with COVID.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
The poor guy. This man had been nothing but nice to me, and I was broken heart. I did not want anything bad to happen to this man. Not just because of the search, but
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, this is a human being. He's a family, the wife texts me back probably about 30 minutes later. I'm going to give you the number of somebody you can contact that can keep working with you. Okay, cool. Get in touch with him. He said, I can't get down there to let you in. And I was like, God, man, here we go. Shoot. And he goes, you know what? We trust you, Jason. Here's how to get into the property. You have our full and complete permission to go onto the property to do whatever you need to do. Here's how to get to the gate.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. So that was a huge leap,
Yeah.
for them to trust me.
Absolutely. But it's going back to that point, like you're developing this relationship over long term. They know your interest because of the packet that you sent, the way that you made sense of, hey, do you know this guy is missing? Here's where his vehicle was. Here's where your property is. Like that, all of that communication is coming together for these types of decisions to happen. And now you're getting access to the land because of it. Wow.
Yeah. So I get off the phone with him and everything, and I call Brad Lawson, Brandon's father. I said, okay, it's all coming together. I think we're going to be okay. And he goes, have you seen the weather report? What? It was 49 and breezy last time I looked. What's up? You might want to check it again. High at 34, winds 25 to 30 mile an hour. Oh, man.
Yeah.
And Ladessa had gotten sick, so she was not going to be able to make it. Mr. Lawson said, I'm 60 plus years old at this point. I can't be running around in the cold on an ATV. And I said, I understand. I get it.
Yeah.
And at this point, I'm thinking about calling it off because it's going to be cold, So I just said, I told Mr. Lawson, I'm going to ask my search team I'll still go by myself. I don't want to I'm not going to be able to do much, just me, but I'll do what I can. And if it gets worse and I have to call it off, I'll call it off. I messaged my search team and I said, what do you guys want to do? The weather has changed. It's going to be really brutal and cold. I got no problem putting the long johns on and gearing up, but what do you guys want to do? Each and every single one of them said, we're not stopping the search, man. We're going. I said, okay, let's do it. Called Mr. Lawson back, said, we're still going to go. He said, okay, well, we trust you down there. We know your heart is 110% in it. So Saturday, January 15th, 2022. Normally I wake up about 5 a.m. and drive to Bront to start a search. with it being cold, I wanted the sun to come up and at least try to warm up what it could.
Sure.
So I messaged the search team Friday night, said, I'm going to get the Bronx probably about 10 in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And I got up, and that whole drive felt different. I don't know why, but and I wasn't expecting it to go the way it obviously ended up going, but just something about that drive just felt different. So I get the Bronx about 10 in the morning, open the gate and let everybody onto the property. We start closest to the roadway being 277, and work our way out.
Mm-hmm.
My thought process in that moment was, if he's here, he's probably somewhere near the roadway if he was walking along the roadway. We made about 2 or 3 passes of the property, and we weren't finding anything. There was a lot of animal bones. Luckily, they were animal bones. It got to probably be about 1:30, 2 o'clock. I said, how you guys feeling? You want to take a break, get some water? They're like, yeah, we need a break. Okay, well, let's take a break, munch on something, get something to drink, and, rest for a minute. I'm going to look at a map of the property while we're all resting. I'm looking at the map of this property, and as I'm looking at it, my conversation with Lou is starting to flash back. He's in an area that no bodies looked. That's the words that keep running through my head. And I got to noticing a part of the property that didn't look like it had any ATV trails or deer stands on it. And I said, I want to go back there. So I gathered my search team up and I said, okay, this property is kind of oddly shaped. I won't give away the exact shape of it, but I said, if we cover this little area where I'm looking at on the map and we knock that out, we're obviously going to have to come back because we're not going to finish this today. But when we come back, we'll have nothing but a perfect square to finish out. And they all said, okay. So we walked back to this area, and I search with what's called a lane pattern search. It's where everybody lines up in a line next to each other, and you kind of go back and forth over the property. And you turn and you come back as you go,
Okay.
kind of like in a sweeping motion.
Yeah.
And man, we weren't back in this area 5 minutes. And the couple to my left, it's a husband and wife couple. As I'm walking, I always look over and keep an eye on my team, make sure they're right next to me. I'm walking and I look, and the lady that's supposed to be next to me is not next to me. And so I turn, and her husband's next to her, and she's down on the ground, just like with her arms out, kind of like this, and she's looking down. So, Jason, there's part of his shoe here. Okay, no problem. I knew what type of shoe Brandon had on when he went missing. And luckily, this same couple, this just goes to speak how smart they were, smarter than me, thinking ahead. They actually found an exact same pair of that shoe on eBay, same color, everything, and bought it and brought it with them to the search.
Wow.
So we could look at it and see it and know what we were looking for. I knew when talking with Chief Barry and some other people that one thing that was likely to survive that long was the shoe, more specifically the rubber bottom.
Right.
Because rubber doesn't deteriorate
Yes.
as quickly. And, this lady, this young lady sitting there staring at the bottom part of the shoe here. Okay. So I walk over, and it's laying like this. So I can't see the bottom part. That's what I need to see. So we were able to.
The top is all gone, like all of the leather part.
Basically, the rubber bottom has separated from the rest of the shoe.
Okay.
So it's, and that's when I see the Nike symbol and the word Max. And I just went, well, I won't repeat the word I said, but uh-oh.
Yeah.
And about that time, as I'm looking at this, Melissa from Cold's Crimes and Cabernet, and her husband have something, on the opposite end of the line that they're kneeling down to look at. And I'm looking at this shoe. This is a Nike Air Max. That's what Brandon had on. And I hear Melissa's husband say, there's a pair of shorts here. It's camouflage shorts. Those are the shorts. That's what Brandon was wearing when he was missing, was shorts.
Well, and you're out in this area. There's no trails.
Yeah.
There's no reason for any sign of life or sign of a human to be out in that area.
No.
Yeah.
And, another thing that the landowners told me was that they don't even go to that property that often.
Right.
They will go to it, every couple of years or something like that, just to hunt, or we'll let some friends go hunt. But other than that, we're not out there really.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it didn't surprise me that they didn't stumble upon this. And even then, they didn't know there was missing. So, finding just a piece of random clothing probably wouldn't have thrown up any red flags for them. And if you go out into your local woods and search, you'd be surprised what you'll find.
Yeah.
But so I'm sitting there in my mind going, man, all this is really starting to look like I've got something here. And I wasn't sure who to call really, whether it was Coke County or the Texas Rangers, and I just said, I need to call Lou Berry, because if anybody's going to know, he is.
Yeah.
And a couple of the guys, decided to go ahead and walk a little further a ways, and the cell phone services out there is kind of crummy, and the wind's blowing and it's cold. And have you ever tried to hold your phone in the sunlight? The sunlight makes it really hard to see your screen. So I'm trying to find Lou's number, and I hear the guys shout, I found the other shoe. And I just went, oh man, this is it. This has got to be it. No, what are the odds that somebody else is running around here in the exact same pair of clothing that a man went missing wearing?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's almost impossible.
Yeah.
So I knew right there, kind of, this is it. We just found evidence of Brandon. So I got on the phone and I called Lou Berry. I said, "You're not gonna believe this, but I think we just got it, And he said, "What do you got?" And I sent him pictures of everything that we had. And he said, "Okay, game's over. It's time to call in law enforcement." He said, "You got to get your people out of there. You got to evacuate the area, because if there's more evidence out there, y'all don't need to be running around." I said, "Yeah, I know." So,
do you tag it in some way? Like, how do you mark the area? Or
we mark it with a GPS.
Okay.
So I'm talking to Lou, and he says, "Okay, you want to contact the sheriff, or do you want me to?" And I'm like, "You're the retired police chief. You contact it."
Good call.
Says, "Okay, let me see if I can get a hold of the office." And he goes, "You guys just get out of there, walk back to your cars, and sit tight. Let me see if I can get a hold of the office." And so we walk back to the cars, and the full gravity of what just happened hits me. And that's where you get that famous picture that's on, where I'm sitting on the ground and Melissa's husband is, it all came, man. Like,
yeah.
The floodgates opened.
Mm-hmm.
I knew tonight this family has an answer.
Yeah.
Not to make this about me in any way, shape, form, or fashion, because it's not. But that picture, like I said at CrimeCon, is a man that's realizing about 1,000 things all at once.
Mm-hmm.
Years of hard work on the family's part, years of hard work on the community's part, years of hard work on my part have just paid off.
Yeah.
All that hoping, all that praying, all that, all those times I was ready to say I can't do this. It's, I'm never going to be able to do this, and just not giving up on it. Boom, everything culminated right there, and within a span of 5 minutes. And Lou calls me back, says, "I got a hold of the sheriff. He's going to be calling you. Keep your phone right by you." I said, "Okay." And I get a phone call from Deputy Neal, the exact same deputy that responded to Brandon's to the call from the trucker that night and was there. And he said, "I understand you think you found some evidence. What do you have?" And I told him, and he says, "Okay." where are you? And I told him exactly how to get to the property. He said, okay, I'll be there here in just a few minutes. And he comes out there, we open the gate, we let him in, and we walk him back to where the stuff is, and he starts looking over it, and he goes, okay, well, uh, I'm gonna have to contact the Texas Rangers. And I heard him get on the phone with the ranger, and I heard him tell the ranger this is consistent with what the man was wearing when the night he went missing. I don't think I'll get in trouble for saying what the ranger told me a little bit. And I shook hands with him, and he said, you guys have done a really good thing out here today. Very appreciative to have this information. I'm about 90% sure this is going to be Brandon. We're going to have to come back out with a search team and see if we can find remains. And so that's how, they bagged everything up. They tagged it, collected it, took photographs, and, wrapped everything up. And
Have you sent the team home at this point, or
oh, the team is still there.
Okay.
They're just kind of hanging out by their cars and sitting with the heaters going because we'd all been freezing our butts off.
Yeah.
But I knew. Yeah, go ahead.
Where does it go from here? So law enforcement kind of gets the handoff from you guys. Do you guys go to a restaurant somewhere just in shock?
They're like, okay, well, he gave you permission to call the family. What are you going to do? And I said, well, it's dark. The wild hogs are going to start coming out. I want to get off this property first. Let's go down to the cross.
Mm.
I thought the spot where that nightmare began for them should be the spot where it starts to come to a close for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what we did, man. We drove down to the cross. We all parked on the side of the road, got out of the car, and I just called Ladessa right there. And she said, hello. And I said, are you at home? And she said, yes, I'm at home. I said, I think maybe you better sit down. And she said, what's going on? And I just said, I think it's over for you. I mean, I don't have official confirmation of that yet. And she said, what are you talking about? And I said, we found his shoes, Ladessa, and his shorts. And she immediately started crying. She said, are you sure? Are you sure? Yes, I'm sure. I'm 100% sure. I told her, law enforcement's going to have to come back out and see if they can find, him. But I don't think he's going to be very far away.
Yeah.
You find the shoes, you find the shorts. He didn't walk out of here, without shoes and shorts and disappear and start a new life. That's not. He's out here somewhere. His physical remains are out here somewhere.
Yeah.
And we talked for a minute. She said, have you called Brad yet? I said, no, I gotta, I'm planning to call him next. And she says, well, I think, I want to be there when you call him. Can you do a 3-way call with him? I said, yeah, sure, no problem. Called him up, and he said, hey man, how's it going out there? And I said, well, Brad, is your wife with you? And he said, yeah. So I think you better go get her and sit on the couch, man. And I just lined it all back out for him the same way I did for Ladessa. And it was shock, relief, some kind of hope, all in one phone call, man.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm. So law enforcement, do they get back out there the next day? Do you know what the process is from this point?
It gave them enough information to basically reopen and activate the investigation into his disappearance, because now they had additional evidence. They knew, okay, he didn't run off to Timbuktu. He didn't run off with somebody. His shoes and his shorts are here. He's got to be here.
Yeah.
And so that gave them enough information to know they, at the very least, they had a death investigation on their hands. So, or at least a suspected death investigation. Even though, they hadn't found physical remains yet, but they were highly suspected to be in the area. So it took the Rangers probably, they were originally going to do it about a week to a week and a half after the fact, but they had some sort of, I don't know if it was another ranger that was shot or something of that nature, some other ranger involved incident. And so they had to focus on that for a couple of days. And then they probably came back about 2 weeks later, 2.5 weeks later, something like that. And when they came back, man, they went out there with cadaver dogs and, trained people,
Mhm.
forensic people, and stuff like that, and combed over the area, and that's when they found
Yeah.
remains.
Yeah. So they did find human remains, and the
Yes.
Charlie Project currently states, although police are still doing DNA tests to confirm the identification, Lawson's clothes were also found in the vicinity, and his family has accepted that the body must be his. His death is under investigation. Um, of course, I've been waiting to hear. I mean, it feels like we're all on the same page. We know that these remains are Brandon, but the solid confirmation in terms of DNA hasn't happened yet. Where is
Right.
it now? What's going on with this DNA? It's been over a year. I would assume that this testing should be done now. Is there some kind of backlog? Is there some issue with it? What do you think's going on with this?
Well, without revealing too much, I can say that it is being worked on. It is being worked on. Uh, as you know, there are a variety of challenges that can come up sometimes in cases like these. Backlog for the lab is one of them. It depends on the type of investigation going on. In this case, we know that this DNA analysis is specifically for purpose of identification.
Right.
There's not a prosecution going on. There's not
A criminal
an
investigation at this point that's spurring it or giving it a higher priority.
correct. And when you have an investigation where it's simply for identification purposes, a lot of times those fall to the bottom of the list because the labs are busy processing, rape cases, murder cases,
Yeah.
identifying suspects, successful prosecution. So all those others kind of fall down to the bottom of the priority list.
Right.
There's other things that can play a variety of factors. How much remains were found? As Ladessa stated on the Help Find Brandon Lawson Facebook page a couple of weeks ago, very little was found. That can make things difficult.
Yeah,
Age,
degradation. I mean, there's all kinds
degradation.
of different
Yes, there's
things.
all kinds of factors, and so
So
that
yeah,
that's
we've got some
what.
challenges here, is
Yes,
basically in terms
yes,
of the timing. And
yes.
is it your feeling that the family already knows this is Brandon, right? So is this DNA
That
result going to be a big thing to you, to them, or is it just kind of the final hoop in
I
this?
think it's kind of the final. It's just basically confirming what we already really know and suspect. I mean, you find the clothing, you find remains.
Yeah.
It's a mile away from where the truck was. There's nobody else missing from that area. There is another missing man in Coke County, but he went missing in a completely different time frame under completely different circumstances in a completely different area of Coke County.
Yeah.
So it's highly, highly unlikely, realistically, that it's anybody other than Brandon.
Right. Right. Yeah. What do you think happened? You've seen the area, you've seen where it looks like he wound up. What do you think happened to Brandon that night?
It's hard to say. Um, I try to leave myself kind of open until law enforcement finishes their investigation. Uh, I, that's the best answer I can give right now, is that let's just wait and see what the police release. There are, knowing what we found and where we found it, I think some scenarios are a lot more um, plausible than others, you know.
I mean, we don't think this is a criminal investigation.
At this point, no.
Okay.
Now, could that change? Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
like I said, and it's just I'm I'm kind of just waiting to see what law enforcement releases.
Yeah. Yeah.
I kind of,
Well, with the types of remains that you're talking about, I mean, having a cause of death or manner of death determination is probably not in the cards. Probably not going to happen.
I would say Probably not.
Yeah.
I mean, they can do some interesting stuff nowadays with the technology, but with knowing what they found, which was so little,
Yeah.
I don't, I just don't know
Do you
what
have
they.
any sense from Ladessa about other questions that she wants answered in this?
Well, I think we all would like to know exactly what happened that night. You know, but I think they would like to know that. But the most important thing for them right now is just confirming this is Brandon and then laying him to rest, I think.
Yeah.
I know that's what is foremost on Mr. Lawson's mind, is just recovering his son, and he'll worry about the rest later.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is another kind of side effect about this waiting on the tests and all that. The remains haven't been returned, so they can't really.
Yeah. And I hate that. Well, I mean, we all hate that it's taken this long, but
Yeah.
it is being worked on. I mean, this case is in a whole different
Oh,
area
yeah.
than it was a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
We've gone from knowing absolutely nothing to it's just a matter of when the analysis is done.
Yeah. And from this, I know it wasn't very long at all before you were starting to bring other cases to my attention, talking about other things that you were going to go off and try to work on. I know that you've been working on another case now and with some conditions that seem kind of familiar in terms of what
Oh
you went
yeah.
through with Brandon's. Jason David Landry was last seen in San Marcos, Texas on December 13th, 2020. He left his apartment at 10:55 p.m. to drive to Missouri City, Texas to visit his family. After his disappearance, his vehicle was found wrecked and abandoned just outside of Luling, Texas. The car's lights were on, the keys in the ignition, and the front passenger door was locked. Landry's keys, wallet, phone, and other personal belongings were inside the car. About 900 feet south of the car was the clothing Landry is believed to have been wearing at the time of the crash. This brings up a really challenging aspect of this case. I mean, the thing that tipped you off to where Brandon was the clothing. And in Landry's case, we don't have the clothing still with him. For some reason, the clothing came off before he disappeared. Investigators believe Landry was driving, sustained little to no injury, and was able to walk away from the crash site. They believe whatever caused his disappearance happened after the crash occurred. Dogs tracked Landry's scent for a quarter of a mile from the crash site, then lost the trail. What have you been doing to help with this case, Jason?
I have been assisting and leading the boots on the ground searches for Jason. There have been 4-foot searches since September of last year. We've covered thousands of acres. We're kind of doing what we did in Brandon's case, and that's starting from scratch and moving, working our way out away from the crash site. This is another one where, like Brandon, I suspect that he is most likely somewhere still in the vicinity of the car crash, and he is probably in an area that has not been searched yet.
It's amazing to think of what you've done to help the Lawson family. And I know Kent Landry just grabbed my heart seeing him speak about the disappearance of his son. And I've been trying to help him ever since. I'll have a link in the description box down below to the coverage that I've done on that case as well. So you guys can roll right into that off of this. But
Yeah.
and you've got more searches coming up out there, right?
Yes, sir. I'm raring to get back out there. I got a passion for this, man. It's one of those things that really sets my blood on fire and gets it pumping, and just wanting to help these other people. And as you know, John, there's dozens of cases that are probably just like Brandon's, and it's just a matter of searching for the person.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's several cases I could think of off the top of my head where we have this similar situation, car left behind, person for some reason seems to have left the vehicle on foot, and then we lose track of them. This is unfortunately a familiar situation. So
Yeah,
it's good to know that people are figuring this out. And that's part of why I was kind of chomping at the bit ever since Jason told me about Brandon's discovery. I'm like, dude, we got to do a long form interview. Like, I need to find the pieces that are part of this equation so that we could share those with other people. And I
right.
think we found several great points that I'm going to be sharing with families that are in similar situations from today's conversation. I mean, the high level approach, the relationships you had to develop with the landowners. I'm sure you're doing these same things when it comes to the Landry case as well. And then just the fact of the how the approach, the timing of it, and even having that day, like how many hours could you have been out there that day? You were going for what, maybe a 6 hour search?
We started at 10, and I want to say we found the clothing somewhere around 3:30,
I
3:45.
mean,
So
it's just amazing. It's
yeah,
amazing that it was
it was
really,
really
yeah, it was really about finding the right location and then having the right approach with that location to make it all work. And of course, having great partners was a big part of that. Have you been talking to Lou about the Landry case as well?
I have a little bit. I have asked his opinion on some things, and he is like he's just been awesome, man. He's just been a huge mentor to me. I
Yeah,
know if him, I can contact him and say, "Hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that?"
yeah,
And just one of the most kindest guys I've ever, and just willing to pass on his knowledge to the next generation. Matter of fact, that's what he does now. Is he teaches, at the college, and I think he still teaches at the police academy. Teaches up and coming police cadets.
yeah.
And
Yeah, and he's one of the very special aspects of private investigations for the missing. So also on this video, I'm going to be turning the fundraiser that we've been doing for them over the past few months. That's back on. If you guys were moved by this story at all, please consider just hitting that blue button down below and sending some funds to private investigations for the missing. But we've also got another fund to tell you guys about. I was asking Jason, how can we help support your current efforts to find Jason Landry? And he let me know about a GoFundMe that's actually running. So I'm going to have a link to that in the description box down below. But on top of that, we'll be making a donation on behalf of myself and my supporters. Thank you guys so much. We're putting it right in. And honestly, Jason, it's in honor of the work that you're doing out there and people that are like you that are putting their boots on the ground and looking for these missing loved ones, man. I mean, this is one of the biggest success stories in terms of this community that we have. And I feel very fortunate that you brought me into the fold years ago with your search efforts. And I've been watching it and been on the line with him time and time again, talking about this. How's it going? What's going on next? What's the next approach? Thank you so much for making me a part of this, man. I really appreciate you.
thank you for your friendship too. I mean, your coverage on Brandon, I think, was one of the first major coverages that even covered him at all.
Yeah.
And I remember watching that first brain scratch video, going, "Man, this guy's got something, man. He's good." And I'm so happy that you and I are friends. Coming down to Crime Con in Austin in 21 and us doing that, that was just such a special weekend that I always hold near and dear to my heart. If they ever invent a time machine, I'll go back and live that weekend again, just because I enjoyed it so much.
That was really special for me too, to help you guys get a table there, to see Brandon's father again, and then last year's in Vegas. I mean, to be part of that panel discussion and be part of that moment and to be there for LaDessa that's I'm getting chills just thinking about it. That's obviously one of the highlights of my time in this true crime community, is being there for these people that are really affected by this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'll never forget that.
Tim and Lance first approached me about that. I said, we need to make John Lorden a part of
it. Well, I appreciate
Absolutely.
you so much, Jason. Do me a favor, send a big hello and hug to LaDessa and Brandon's family from me. And hopefully,
I will.
yeah,
I
hopefully
will.
I'll see all of you guys again real soon in person.
Yeah. To your listening audience that donates to the Jason Landry GoFundMe, I just want to say thank you. All of the proceeds from this GoFundMe fund future search efforts. I mean, we got some equipment rentals that we rent, and there's hotels involved for some of our searchers that come out of state, and so all of those proceeds to that fund go to help fund that.
Yeah.
And stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you guys so much for helping to support that. Jason, you take care. I'll see you again real soon. And thank you guys for hanging out with us here today. listening to the story of Brandon Lawson and Jason Watts and a bunch of other caring people that came together to make a big change in this case. I'm so proud of you guys. Take
One
care.
person made a difference.
One person can make a difference. Take care, everyone, and I'll see you again here on the LordanArts channel.